I think that a lot of the things we want to change remain persistent not because of the strengths of that thing, but the strength of our own persistence to not acknowledge whatever it is that's in front of us. And when I say that, I really just mean that you can't heal what you don't acknowledge. A lot of the things in life aren't necessarily difficult because of, a relative difficulty, but our relative understanding of who we are and how we relate to that something. I think it's important to sort of give yourself the grace and clarity to understand that whatever it is that you're facing is oftentimes more so a reflection of you than it. As long as we allow our feelings to project onto whatever it is that we encounter, it becomes us. And in that way, our own insecurity, our own negativity about certain situations, certain ideas, and things is embodied within the world we live in. And when I say you can't heal what you don't acknowledge, is really talking about your internal workings and how it relates to you as a person. Because I feel like a lot of us have parts of us that we want to change or parts of us that seek out change. And I realize that it's our reluctance to, you know, pinpoint that part. And we treat our whole selves like we're reluctant to change, like we don't want to. When, I feel like that's everyone's goal at the end of the day to sort of alleviate some of the stress and burdens that they place on themselves over the years. And when it comes to healing, you have to look at what you're healing. You have to address the thing that's causing you pain, otherwise it's going to continue. They say like before you heal a man of his illness, make sure he's willing to give up the things that make him sick. And I realize a lot of times the things that makes us sick is ourselves and our own perspective of who we are and our own growth and healing. Because when it comes to a lot of issues, like in my past, back when I used to have sort of a negative-ish mentality, it was really my relationship to it. It was how much I thought it was inherent to my character and how much I thought it was unwilling to change. And it wasn't until I broadened my perspective of myself and understood that, you know, as I think I am as I think I am. Like I have to give myself that type of grace and understanding to capitalize off of broadening my perspective. I sort of have to give myself room to grow. And if I don't give myself that room to grow, and if I didn't give myself that room to grow, then I would be stuck in the same cycle. They say what isn't resolved always repeats. And I feel like that's very true. And especially when it comes to our own pain and the things that sort of cause us pain. Because in saying you can't heal what you don't acknowledge, it's not saying you can't alleviate the pain for some finite short amount of time. I think a lot of us do stuff in an external sense when we try to find those external solutions to our internal problems to alleviate sort of the burden of whatever it is right now and push it off into a later time. And what I realized in doing that is all we're doing is running from ourselves. Because the part of us that is seeking out change, the part of ourselves that we don't want to acknowledge is always with us. And if you're always running from yourself, you'll never escape it. I realize we're not something that we can escape. And that's why I feel like it's important to have some sort of acknowledgement and confrontation of the self. Because you're always going to be there with you. And as long as you realize that, you should be inclined, or I find that it's important to sort of befriend who's there. There's no point in walking through life, and having yourself as your own enemy. And I already feel like a lot of us are our own biggest critic, because any judgment that I feel is cast upon us is cast by us. Somebody can say a certain thing about you, somebody can feel a certain way about you. But I feel like if you don't agree to it, then it won't be. And that's sort of what the book, The Four Agreements, talks about. But I think everybody should read that. It's a great book. But I think a lot of the things we agree to become our reality. Like if I agree that I'm, a certain way and somebody says something that aligns with it. Like if somebody says, I can't hoop or something. Actually, that's I won't even say that. If somebody says I'm impatient. If somebody says I'm impatient and I believe them, then I'm going to feel a certain way about that statement. But if I truly justly believe in myself and give myself that validation that I am patient, and I understand that because I'm honest with myself and truthful about how I relate to myself, and I've acknowledged who I am as a person, then it will have no impact. And I realize the impact of other people's words and other people's actions and even the world at times is really just our relationship to it and how much validation we seek from that which is not us. How much of ourselves we invest in places that really have nothing to do with us. And not nothing to do with us in the sense that we aren't a part of it or we don't interact with it, but in saying that who we are is not governed by everything outside of us, but everything within us. In a lot of ways, everything is internal. Everything is internal. The way we interact with everyone, I don't even know. The way we get goals, the way we achieve our dreams and do whatever. Everything always relates back to an internal self, in a sense, or internal feeling, or whatever it is that drives your actions or motivates your certain goals and activities. And if we can recognize that we're the sort of pinpointing and catalyst to our own change at times, then we should be that agent intentionally and often. In acknowledging our own pain, I think we realize the solution to a lot of our problems was our own audience and own attention. I've said it in videos before that you have to be present enough to see, but you have to be present enough to see yourself as well. You have to see the certain implications of your certain actions and understand where they're coming from. And I feel like it's that acknowledgement of whatever the action is or whatever is behind your reason for asking why or questioning yourself. That's when you find the answer. I feel like that's when you truly get an opportunity to see what's out there and see what's within yourself so you can attack the problem. Because I realize if you have like a crazy cut on your leg and you just ignore it, it will be hard to heal, or it might get infected or something like that. It might happen. It might occur. And with yourself, I realize a lot of us are in pain. Whether or not we want to admit it to ourselves is neither here nor there, but I think admitting is the first step to your actual healing. You have to understand yourself a little bit to heal, because you need to know what you need to do in order to do that. And a lot of times I realize it hasn't really been, I have to do this grand thing, like, I have to meditate for 2 hours and hope I'll be okay and do this, that, and the other. I realize healing is a very gradual process. You're not going to heal from something instantaneously, especially if what you're healing from is something you feel is inherent to your character. And that's why I feel like it's also important to broaden your perspective of yourself, because what you allow to be within you will be within you. And our cage is not what contains us, but what we contain within ourselves. And that understanding that, we have that negative part of us and it's within us and it's stuck within us and we have to do this, that, and the other. And trying to make ourselves feel like we have to jump through hoops to heal it makes us have to jump through hoops to heal it. It's about how much we take from the outside world and how personally we take certain actions, certain characteristics, this is that and the other to ourselves. It's about giving ourselves enough grace to sort of take that step back from our own definition and our own mind enough to see who we really are, or at least to implement some idea of who we want to be. I think in focusing on a lot of what we lack, or in focusing on all these problems and focusing on this is that, we lose track of so much. And I realize that, life's beauty isn't necessarily contained with everything that's out here, but within our perspective of it. If you truly, I guess, attempt to bring some type of positivity within your life, or try to bring gratitude, or try to bring this, that, and another, and acknowledge your negativity, it gets so much easier to acknowledge your positivity as well. I feel like they've always been a double-edged sword, or two sides of the same coin. You can't have the light without the dark. And yourself is the same. You have to recognize where certain things are coming from, and you have to understand where your positivity comes from too. Because in finding out what makes you feel most like yourself, or what makes you feel positive, you figure out what you want to do, or things that you can do to find your way back to yourself, and figure out more and more positivity about yourself while healing the negative. Because I don't think it's about casting out. It's not about getting rid of anything. Like, it's not like if I got a wound on my leg, but I wouldn't cut off my leg to heal the wound that's on it. I would tend to the wound and make sure something new is placed within it. And I feel like we have to do the same with ourselves. The part of ourselves that's seeking our change, that's hurting, that's this, that, and the other, it's about tending to it and turning it into something positive. Making it once again useful for your character, so it's not just weight that you carry, but weight that allows you to move forward. Something that sort of alleviates the burden that is you. And there is no burden to being yourself or a burden to being you, but there is a burden, I think, in trying to attribute to self which is not you, trying to gain your value in things that aren't you. And I think there's a certain way to that because you try to get it from things that aren't you. We're looking out into the world to try to get a better perspective of ourselves. And I find that's pretty contradictory. It's almost like we're looking in all the wrong places without realizing the thing that we're always looking for is right here. Right here, as in it's you. And that's what is meant by, you sort of are your own answer and you are your own path. Because any understanding in anything that you do in this life always teaches you more about yourself. Whether or not you want to acknowledge it, it does. And I think that's what another part of acknowledgement is, your presence with life. Understanding that you can learn just as much as you want from any experience. I find it's just about treating everything like it's new and understanding each and every part of the perspective. Like sometimes when I'm listening to people talk, sometimes even if it's not interesting, I try to gain something from it, even if it's just understanding their perspective of the world a little bit. And I think that's a lot of what communication is, and validating it. And you have to validate your own perspective too. There's so much within everything that we do, and there's so much within the world around us, and we can't really recognize the gift that is everything around us if we can't, instantiate all the positivity that's within us. Or if we can't come to terms with whatever is negative and whatever is weighing us down, we'll never be able to, bring ourselves up to the present moment. We're always being dragged down by the past, dragged down by the future even. And I feel like the present moment is the thing that's really free of restriction, because it allows you to sort of traverse the unknown and acknowledge things as they happen. So you're no longer dragged down by the thought of something happening or the thought of something that happened. There is no could or should have, only things that have happened. And that's what's important to acknowledge. You have to appreciate everything that's happened and appreciate the moment you're in right now to get where you're going. It's not always saying that's an easy thing, because of course there's things in our past that are traumatic, that hurt us, that did this, that, and the other to us. But it's important to acknowledge so you can heal that and move forward. You can't leave anything behind if you don't move forward. And your forward movement is honestly contingent on your acknowledgement of whatever problems or whatever issues may come about in your life. And a lot of times things aren't so much an issue as they are our relationship to it. And that's why I feel like you have to acknowledge the self before you acknowledge anything you're confronting. Because it's always yourself and your reaction to whatever the stimulus is. And I think a lot of us try to think about how we should react to something without understanding why we react a certain way to a certain stimulus. How do I feel about this thing that happened? How do I feel about this event? How do I feel about, this thing that I might do in the future? But it's always your relationship to how do I feel about this? And in figuring out and trying to figure out what that I is, it makes it easier to answer those questions over and over again. I feel like acknowledgement of yourself is what heals you, because you understand what you need to do in order to actually heal, or to actually, not even be yourself, but become more aware of it. Because you really hold yourself together by letting go. The more we allow ourselves to sort of be free, the more we allow our definition of ourselves to be broad, then everything within it will be us. And in that way, we hold ourselves together by giving ourselves freedom to go wherever. Treating ourselves like our good characteristics or our character is not something that leaves us if we were to let go. No, it's about being in the present moment and allowing yourself to sort of traverse the world around you and understand it to a greater degree, and understand yourself to a greater degree so you can enjoy it. The comfort in life is not necessarily placed by things that are comfortable, but your perspective of comfortable things. And I find that I've been able to find a lot more comfort in uncomfortable situations just by finding that comfort within myself. And that's why I feel like it's important to set your foundation within you. So whatever you build on top of it, whatever you come across, has you within it. And if you are something you like, and if you feel like you're good, then no matter the situation, good will be present within it. And that's what I feel like acknowledgement truly does, and healing truly does. It allows you to instantiate whatever you want to be placed within your wound, or whatever your vacancy is, so it's present within your life. All that to really say that, it's important to sort of take care of yourself by being honest with yourself, by being not necessarily critical, but caring. Treating yourself like a friend isn't just about like being delusional, like, oh, if I do something bad, if I'm a good friend, I'm going to tell my friend when they did something bad. Or I'm going to tell my friend when something didn't go the way it should have, or this is that and the other. But I tell them that not because I'm trying to be spiteful or mean or none of anything like that, but because I care enough to allow them to grow from that experience. And we can't grow from anything that we shy away from. I feel like a lot of the things that help us grow are abundant in this world, and they're abundant not because they're just all around, but because it's always inside you. I feel like that type of abundance has always been a mentality, and that's why I feel like it's important to give to yourself. All in all, if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate all of y'all. Make sure you're acknowledging the things that are sort of seeking out change. Of course, give yourself grace with that. Don't be super hard on yourself. And I'm not saying be hard on yourself in any sense. I just think it's important to sort of free ourselves from our own restrictions a lot of times. Because I feel like what we don't want to acknowledge is a lot of times acknowledged negatively by our running, by our, shying away from it. So make sure you're treating yourself like a friend. Make sure you're doing what you can with what you have. And